Hello and welcome to Downtown Dialogues, Theatrical Outfit's brand new podcast that digs into the deeper themes and questions behind our work. I'm Matt Torney, Theatrical Outfit's artistic director, and I'm recording this today from the box office at our theatre, right in the heart of downtown Atlanta. Today's episode features a post-show conversation that followed a reading of Stew by Zora Howard. Zora is one of the most exciting playwrights working today, and Stew is her hit play that opened earlier this year off-Broadway. Stew tells the story of 3 generations of African American women who gather in the kitchen to cook Mama's famous stew. As the food boils on the stove, tensions rise, secrets are revealed, and we get to look inside the lives and relationships of 4 extraordinary characters. Immediately following the reading, Gail O'Neill assembled a panel of experts to talk about food, art, and family. She was joined by the reading's director, Owolabi, playwright Zora Howard, Mashama Bailey, who's the head chef of the Grey restaurant in Savannah, and Latria Graham, who's a South Carolina-based food writer and cultural commentator. We had a few sound issues, so we're going to join the conversation about 10 minutes in. Please enjoy.
Yes. Mashama, as somebody who has cooked in the home, and I have to just give a shout out to you, that episode of Chef's Table that featured you on Netflix was outstanding for anyone who has not seen it. Better than Big Night, better than like Water for Chocolate, better than any movie you've seen about food and connect. It's just extraordinary. So as someone who has cooked with your mother and father, with your grandparents in Savannah, Georgia, and in, was it Chicago where you grew up? Or no, in Brooklyn. Your connection is coming and going, but I'll get to my question. Okay, so here's my question. As somebody who has cooked for family and cooked in a professional kitchen, is it the same or does the dynamic change? Because I imagine that in a chef's kitchen, you have to be like family to work together.
In a professional kitchen, you need to be organized. You need to communicate your end goal, and you need to express that in a way where someone who doesn't know you, like your mother or your father, can follow. But in the home, it's so intuitive. It's, you know, they grew up with you, they raised you, so they know where you're weak, they know where you're strong. They know what they taught you and what they haven't taught you. So in the home, you know, is way more nurturing. And I think for me, one of the favorite parts of the play was those moments when she was layering the dough in order to put into the stew, and she was kind. There were moments of tenderness where the younger generation was drawn in. And those are the moments that you're like, wow, this is why it's so important. Like, you know, I don't think they got it until they had that moment, and they were like, wow, okay, now I understand why this stew is so important to her and what she's putting into it, because she's offering a piece of her in that, and they see it go into the pot. And it didn't matter if her favorite pot got burnt. It didn't matter if, you know, she burnt it before because she could just fix it and add some water. But it wasn't until that moment when she was sort of like that gentle moment when she was sharing with them, where I feel like they kind of calmed down and they listened to her. And that probably was one of the few moments that they were actually listening to her. And I think that that's the difference between cooking in a professional kitchen and cooking at home, is that you got to know, like, those people come in and they expect you to be able to explain all the who, why, and when. But when you're at home, it's so intuitive, and you really, really want those tender moments. You want that love, and that's the part that you're putting into the pot.
However, and this is for you, Zora, little mama would be like people who work with Mashama in the kitchen. She wants to know why. She is constantly questioning. And it was interesting to me that as strong and independent as her elders were, they were also messengers for the patriarchy, telling her that you have to know these things. You have to be able to cook for other people. You have to be able to take care of other people. And she asked, well, will Junior be able to take care of other people? Will he be able to take care of himself? So tell me about that dichotomy, the strength and also training little mama to be like the older women to a degree, walking in lockstep with the patriarchy and not questioning it, even though she wants to know why?
Well, I would say, I mean, a couple of things. I think this, when the play is set, it's not set in the present moment. It's set in the time before social media. It's set in the time before really cell phones weren't a thing at this time. They were still, all that phone activity is happening with the phone. I don't know if y'all remember having the phone on your wall or the phone on the kitchen counter. So there's, it is a little bit before the time, not to say that there hasn't always throughout all time been resistance of the patriarchy, but that there was such a present cultural conversation around that. It was so open and out for everyone to see that it was almost to an extent trendy, which it is trending right now. It's necessary, but it is also trending. There's two sides of that. And a lot of the, I would say it's, my generation, the generation that's coming up after me, that are very, very active in being vocal publicly, forward facing on social media, but don't necessarily come from women that had the platform to be public about how they resist, right? They're coming from, women that were in my mother's generation and my grandmother's generation. So culturally grew up in a different moment and were impacted by a different moment. But, there's that thing that you get told in the household, do as I say, not as I do. And in this play, it's a little bit of the opposite as well. Don't do as I say, but do as I do. So she's saying this thing about how, Junior needs, this is what boys do and this is what girls do. But at the same time, the entire thing that mom is doing for the play is she's teaching these younger women how to be self-sufficient. She's teaching these young women how to take care of themselves and take care of their families. She's teaching these younger women how to make something stretch, make something out of nothing, so she is very much, resisting the patriarchy, to use your words. She might not just have the, articulated in the way that we are used to seeing it nowadays. She might not have, read all the theorists and has all, have the hashtags and the memes about it. But the women that I came from very much were matriarchs. Mm-hmm. They were head in their households. They were taking care of not just the men, but of the, giving the women the tools to continue to resist through generation. So I think it's a bit of that thing of, do as I do, not always as I say.
Yeah, it was all very, very familiar. Ibby, on top of directing, I know that you also are not a vocal coach, but a dialect coach with specialties in West African accents and Caribbean accents. Now, my family is Jamaican. So Zora, when I was watching the play and people were constantly telling little mama, go get my purse, go get my bit, and they don't really know words, I thought, I always thought that was a Jamaican thing, but now I realize it is just a woman thing. Ibby, is it the same thing in West Africa? Do people just send kids to go fetch things all over the house? All right.
Yeah.
Tell me what
one of my parents is Caribbean and one is African. So it was just like, wow, this just universally is just what they do. It's like, 4 feet away, go get my purse, go get the remote, go get the this, go get the that. And you better know that it's the black purse with the white buckle, not the white purse with the black. And it's like, how am I supposed to know this? I don't know what purse you had today. And so, yeah, so it's just so, doing this play felt in a lot of ways like a wink. It just really felt like, one of the first things we talked about was like, if you know, but this can't be taught or explained away, especially with like, a 2-day rehearsal process. So yes, doing this show and being like, I was there and I remember when my mom told me this was just it just made this play feel so rewarding. So thank you, Zora. It was really
Latria, you are nodding away. So tell me what you're thinking as Ibby was talking about that. And you're on mute.
Sorry, I did that to cut down on the noise. But no, it was just, there were so many things that I felt were familiar when we think about sort of global Blackness. And I, again, coming out of the South, like that is the thing, you're always looking for the wallet or the purse, like all of that. It just made me feel connected in a very different way than I thought. I mean, looking at all of the women that we're having a conversation with and being connected with them and knowing that we have some of the same memories or sort of pockets of memory together, and just sort of seeing, I looked at the beginning of this play and it was like sort of based in Mount Vernon, New York, but it could be anywhere in some ways in this dynamic of women. And it just, did something to me because of that. And I mean, it was just really, it was a moment, right? It was the ability to share space and share memory and be a little bit nostalgic, but also understand how far we've come and how we're changing and what we're doing. And the fact that it was set before cell phones, it was important, but it still very much resonated with me in the moment. So yeah, I'm just nodding away. And I'm like, I needed this. I didn't know how much I needed this moment. And apparently I did. And so.
Zora, I have a question about I'm from Mount Vernon. So when I saw that, Mama was the head of the Mount Vernon High School dramaturg, whatever her lead was. Tell me what Mount Vernon meant to you, why you wanted to set your play in Mount Vernon.
It's so funny. I grew up in Harlem. I still live in Harlem. But my mother grew up in New Rochelle and had a lot of family in Mount Vernon, and, spending my whole life in the city. When we would go see her family, her extended family in Mount Vernon, we felt like that was kind of country, just because, they had lawns and backyards, and they have whole streets where there are no businesses. You had to go for a little drive to get to the grocery store and stuff like that. So it just felt very different from the environment that I grew up in. And it was just for some of the, what happened in the play. And I didn't want it to feel familiar with that. It could be, maybe also a city in the South, you know what I'm saying? Or in the Midwest. So, sometimes when you set stuff in New York is so specific in terms of just the landscape and with the soundscape, and I wanted to be a little bit more, the space to be a little bit more neutral. And for whatever reason, that's what Mount Vernon occupies in my mind. It's like they got lawns, they got grass. So.
And I went to high school in New Rochelle, so I know that whole area really well. All right, Ibby, Mama was so irritable, and she said she wanted help in the kitchen. Did she really want help? Or is she, there are two very different kind of chefs, the kind of, the TV chefs who everybody's chopping and doing things together. But I think in reality, you tend to have one queen bee in the kitchen, and she doesn't really want a lot of help. She don't even want you looking at her. You can keep your distance, as I call it, the demilitarized zone. You stay on that side, I'm on this side, and I'm good. And this question is for you too, Mashama. Mm-hmm. Did Mama really want help in the kitchen? What did she want?
No, I think so. I've actually had this conversation before of it's like you say you want the help, but if it's not done the way that you would want to do it, it's like, don't do it. Don't touch I'll be honest, I feel sometimes I am that kind of cook. Like when I do Thanksgiving dinner, I do a lot of it myself at this point because I'm like, you're just not cut. I want them at an angle. I want you to cut the carrots at an angle. So I think it's Mama. I think she was like, yeah, I want the option of help, but don't actually help me. So that's what I thought.
Mashama.
The thing about the help is that you want it to come out the way that you want it to come out. So if they are helping you in a way and they're, like you just said, cutting the carrots in the wrong way, you're like, forget it, I'll just do it myself. And I realized that I was sort of running my kitchen like a mama. And I was like, I can't do it necessarily like that because, I need help. I can't feed, 100, 200 people just by myself. So I have to sort of figure out a way to teach them in order to get the same result. They may not do it exactly the same way I want them to, but I have to, but as long as the result is the same, is it. But Mama don't have the patience. She don't have that patience, and she's not trying to waste that money and that energy and that time to figure out if what you doing is going to come out the same way as she doing it. And we all know that it's not going to come out the way that she's doing it. We all know that it's going to take years of practice to get that dressing the way that Mama or Grandmama used to do it, to get those greens the way that Mama do it. Like, we know it's going to take a couple times. And, professionally, you can kind of figure that out. But, like, when you cook in the home, there's no time to waste. You can't figure it out. So, yeah.
All right. Thanksgiving is coming up. So, Mashama, this is another question for you. I want some advice. Now, I know that we're supposed to be socially distancing, but a lot of people will be breaking that rule to be with their loved ones on Thanksgiving. What advice can you give? Tell us something you've learned in the professional kitchen that home chefs can incorporate to keep the explosives at a minimum when cooking Thanksgiving dinner. Xanax, maybe?
Well, I mean, it depends. If you're cooking with your family,
Yes.
then maybe you can prep the things enough before you get to your gathering, so you're all not crowded in the kitchen. So bring your dish covered, ready to go, so you don't have to like be in that tight kitchen together with your family. Some other advice is if you are not going to be with your family, maybe you can order something from your favorite restaurant and have it delivered to them, or something that they like. It can't be something you like, it has to be something that they like, and you can have it delivered to them, and then that could be a way that you can send that love from a distance, right? Like, say if you always make the cranberry sauce and you know who makes the bomb cranberry sauce, you can send it to your mom and your dad from a distance. So that's a cool way to kind of like support local restaurants and local businesses, and also like share your love, you know, and let them know that you're thinking about them during that holiday. But like,
that
if
is
you're
a
gonna
great
gather with
idea.
people, yeah. So I think if you're gonna gather with people, bring it prepared. But if you're away, send that one thing that you kind of always do, so they can be reminded of you.
Mm-hmm. Latria, are you a chef, or do you just love writing about food and cooking?
Recipe developer. So I do some of that for Southern Living, and then I write. I sort of took on the oral history project of learning about herbal plants and foraging in my family, and writing those stories down before they're lost. For the most part, and like I'm a poke salad evangelist in some ways, so I love foraging in that way and telling people about it and saying, you know, you don't have to just cook it old style. Here's new style. You can turn it into a quiche. You can do all of those things. So I am nowhere near. And Mashama, I've eaten at the Gray, and I've eaten my way through that menu more than once, and I adore you. So I am not on that same level whatsoever. And the thrill is my favorite thing. Like I've been in there. I've seen you and been too shy to say hi. My hair was not blue. I think my hair was purple at that point. But like, so yeah, it's one of those things. I enjoy food. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy the stories and telling people how things came to be, because I think sometimes there's erasure across that, especially when you're talking about the African diaspora and what they bring to it. But I'm nowhere near where she is at. My job is to like try to develop things, fail, and figure out how to make it better for sort of the home cook.
Yeah.
So,
Zora, I know you don't cook. You're the one in the family who will just observe. I heard you say this in an interview, so don't give me that look like, who, me?
I can cook.
You can cook. Okay, and are you a measurer, a recipe girl, or can you just get in there and burn without?
It depends on what kind of time I have. It depends on what I'm trying to do. I can cook to live. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can cook, so I'll be good. And also, I enjoy food, so I'm not gonna sit here and just, eat dry, boiled chicken breast so I could have the calories. I'm gonna eat to enjoy as well. But to be honest, I grew up in a serious cooking family. And it was my calling. My brother is a chef. My mother, my aunt, my father, like I just grew up seeing everybody cook. There was nobody who didn't cook. And I was young, so, mostly I had a lot of jobs in the kitchen, but I usually wasn't responsible for, the big shebang. I was zesting lemons and, I don't know, cracking eggs and separating whites and yolks, just that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I can cook. I want to look back and see the interview where I said I can't cook.
I'll send you the link. I think it was Broadway World. And I was kind of offended when the interviewer asked you, why did you choose to set your story in Mount Vernon and your character, like she said something like the characters were not poor. And I was like, what did she just say?
Anyway, in my head, I don't even remember the interview because I might have.
You were very, very polite. You said that Black people have all kinds of experiences, and this was taken from your own family. You talked about your mother and your godmother being from Mount Vernon and so on. So anyway, I won't sit here lame. If this question is too personal for any of you, just skip right over it. But I just wonder if anyone has had experience with dementia with a family member, and how close Zora's script came to what you have experienced or observed. Ibby, you're nodding your head.
Yes, I experienced it with my grandmother. It was pain-related dementia because she was in late stage cancer. She had uterine cancer. And it really is like, looking at somebody and who you know so very intimately and realizing that they kind of are seeing you as a stranger at that moment. I definitely wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it is kind of all the moments where she would go, "You're okay," to the mama, be like, "You're okay. It comes and goes. It comes and goes." I knew it was something that was soothing for both of them. To know, like, I know that you're lucid. I know you have your lucid moments and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that was where that's where it touched me personally. To know that you have that family member and you know that they're not here with you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And then Latria, to dovetail on what Ibby just said, is it soothing for you to see stories of women going through dementia, or is it triggering? Is it upsetting?
My family didn't talk about, my grandfather had dementia. And they actually put him away in a facility, a psychiatric facility. It was not understood that well. And he passed when I was very, very young. And so I didn't get that caregiving, the "you're okay" sort of touchstone. I'm having to put together the life of a man afterwards that no one kind of wanted to talk about. And so seeing it be present and sort of seeing them address it and seeing them care. And I don't know as much about it, whether or not, and he was a large man. So in terms of trying to soothe someone that way, if you're like, we have to put them away, or there's obviously a lot of stigma around, at that point, mental illness, and at some points dementia, and just sort of the burden of caregiving there. So I'm very much having to sort of do that, archaeological dig in some ways, sort of through family and memory and secrets and shame and all of that. And that just to see it this present, and seeing people take ownership of it and create sort of a conversation around it was illuminating in some ways. Because I know people, and I have friends, their parents are dealing with dementia, and they're very much struggling with how to talk about this thing, especially when it comes to, social media, or people, we're in our early 30s and they're not expecting to have to deal with that yet with their parents. And we very much are.
Right. Mashama, I can't help thinking about Proust and the Madeleine, and how you have this one smell or one taste and it brings you right back to your childhood. And I'm curious, in your experience of feeding and caring for people, professionally and personally, talk to me about the healing powers of food, what it does. Yeah.
One of the things that I really have been honing into is the intuitiveness of what cooking does, right? So we are it's funny because we've been changing the menu a lot since COVID, been trying to make sure we're not wasting anything. And we made chicken stock today. And I smelled that chicken stock and I was like, you know what? I want to put some greens in here and I want to have some cornbread, and we're going to put that on the menu. And I think that moment is what you want to feel nourished. And I think that my inspiration is about how the women in my family have nourished me. And I didn't really understand that until I had to go out on my own and lead a kitchen. Because I was like, I don't know, I'm learning Italian and learning French food and learning Spanish food, and I'm traveling to all these different places. But when I had to sort of figure out what was going to inspire me, it was about the things that nurtured me. So I am curious and learning about plant-based foods, because I know for African Americans that is the best way for us to eat. It's the best way for us to sustain those different elements that plague our community, like diabetes and high blood pressure. But I also understand broths and proteins, and using them responsibly are ways to invoke those feelings that we had when we were in our grandmother's kitchen, because we only had a little bit. My grandmother didn't have legs of lamb and all that stuff. No. It was knuckles and feet. And those things went a long way when it came to buying a bushel of greens or turnips, or even sweet potatoes. So I think I take it very seriously, and I kind of liked those quiet moments when I have to listen to myself and figure out what my body wants, and hopefully people are into that. And it's hard to convey that to like some 22-year-old white dude who wants to work for you because you have an episode of Chef's Table. So it's kind of hard. But, you know, I'm trying. So I think it's
All right.
working, but it's definitely close to my heart. Yeah.
I am going to check. I don't see the chat room. So Gretchen, I know you're out there. Gretchen Butler, our wonderful Wizard of Oz behind the green curtain. Gretchen, if you can text me questions as they come in. If any of you have any questions for Zora or for each other, Latria, now's your time to ask any questions of Mashama that you were too shy to ask when you had purple hair. Go for it. I'm going to just check messages from Gretchen. You're on mute, Latria.
Yeah, that's what I was like. And of course, I'm super shy again. So I don't know. There's something that very much stuck with me in the episode of Chef's Table is when you're in New York, and you'll have to remind me of this, whether or not you left or you got fired, and sort of that inner place where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I know, and I'm so sorry, but I also like feel like it was such a vulnerable moment. It was such a candid moment, and it's something that I will always remember because you could have easily skipped right on or rephrased it or reframed it or dealt with it in a very different way than you did. What made you or how did you make the decision to reveal it that way? And can you talk to us more about the process of going from something that perhaps was very humbling to this new space and this new attitude that you decided to move forward with whenever you decided to go to the food industry in this way?
All right, I have to unmute myself. I'm sorry. I feel like my connection is horrible and I'm causing you all pain and aggravation with my audio. But I will like to say that I would like back when the first question was like, who do you relate to the most in the story? And I do honestly relate to Little Mama because it's a little bit of playing the background, naive, interested in the women in your family, and interested in you're sort of learning these tools that you don't even understand that you're actually being given. And one of the things that I really liked about growing up in my family and the women and cooking with women in my family is that everyone in the family really liked their cooking. And it was always a conversation surrounding the table about the dishes that were on the table. So I knew foremost that was really important. And I really liked that praise. And I was always the one that was in the background. Like I wasn't athletic. I wasn't this overt personality. And so when I was doing social work, I was sort of following behind my parents' footsteps. I was like, all right, I guess this is something that I can do a career out of. And I realized that when I was in that position that there were expectations placed on me to lead a program, and I was not measuring up to those expectations. There was not a lot of passion surrounding that. But in the background, we were doing potluck dinners at the job. We were sort of doing these things that were not normal for social services, but we were also, congregating as a community, and we all had to bring stuff. And that's when I realized that people outside my family were like, oh, this is good. Like, what did you put in this? And they started asking me questions about what I did, that was not job related, because no one really asked questions about me being job related because I was always, late or delayed or not performing in a way that was exceptional. But when it came to food, it was sort of like this ego boost. And I think that that's the part that makes me proud about being fired, because I feel like that's when the talent was discovered, that I realized that there was something there. So I don't think that if I wouldn't have gotten fired, I don't think I would have had the guts to move to another career, because I wouldn't have had the means to do it. I got on unemployment, so the apartment that I was living in wasn't that expensive, and I got it through the job through working in that job in social services, so the rent was stabilized. So all these things kind of lined up for me in a way where it was like, well, even if I spend 6 months doing this, it's not going to make that big of a difference. I can figure out what's the next step to do. And as I was going through the very beginning stages of it, I wanted to be there every single day. Like, I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss a class. I didn't want to miss a lesson. I didn't want to miss one part of it. And that's when I really understood that it was joy and that I was good at it. And I got the opportunity to remain in the background. And I like that. I like that I wasn't like sort of having to speak in front of a group of people or having, I like that I can keep my head down and just focus on making delicious things. Then the challenge became impressing my elders, impressing the women that fueled that fire, that lit that flame for me to want to cook as good as them and want people to react to my food as our family reacted to their food. So then it sort of shifted to me trying to sort of prove myself. And it took a little while, but I think they got it. I think they were on the way of getting where I was going and what I wanted to say before they both passed away. So, yeah.
When you talk about responding to the food, it reminds me of one of my favorite lines, Zora, in the play, when Mama tells little Mama, you have to talk to the food. I never even heard that concept until last year. I was interviewing Carla Hall, and she said she talks to her food. So I asked women in the audience, how many of you talk to your food? It was a live conversation. And I would say like half of 120 women gathered in that space, and a few men raised their hand. Ibby, you talk to your food? You're laughing over there.
We haven't had full conversations, no. But if things aren't going well, we have a discussion about why they aren't going well, and how we can fix that. So yeah, I think I have a good relationship with my food when I'm cooking it. And I think as I'm getting older, I'm becoming the kind of person who talks to my food. So I probably will be
hands. How many of you talk to your food as you're cooking? 2 out of 3. Really? Talking to my food. All right, let me ask an audience question. John would like to know, did Junior die? I guess we can ask this of Zora and Ibby. Zora, you go first.
I want to know what Zora thinks.
Ibby, I want to know what you think. It's so funny that
I didn't write it.
when we did the play, yes, Junior died. Yeah. When we did the play in New York, though, people would ask questions about the ending or what happened or what's the story with the men. I would always, well, what do you think? Flip it on them. But that's something I can say.
Tell me about your choice to collapse time at the end of the play. Is Mama experiencing a rememory, or you tell me what was going on there?
Yeah, I really do like to leave, obviously, in writing the play and then bringing a team of artists to collaborate with me on the play and further develop it and then eventually produce and stage it. We had to get very down and detailed about how time works in the play. And what is the time that Mama is experiencing in the play, and how is it different from the time that we as audience members are experiencing the play? And I think time works on 2 levels, because in real time, whatever that means in a drama, a production of drama, in real time, it's an instant, it's a moment. It's because we come back to that moment at the end of the play. It's the same song that's playing. It's literally the same moments that we're seeing. The mug falls, the dog barks, she says the same lines. But within that moment, right, when she kind of steps out of herself, and if it's into memory or if it's a moment of dementia, it's not specified in the script, but in that moment where she steps out of time, which is an instant, several seconds maybe, she goes through a lifetime of experience. And so time is working on, and that's what we feel as an audience. We feel this day, and in this day where she's preparing this meal, but in experience the day that she's preparing the meal, we're hearing these stories that are literally through a lifetime, And and then it comes back to, that same moment that we opened the play with. So and shout out to the actors that and to Ibby to work on this piece in 2 days and try to make that felt on a flat screen in 2 dimensions. And shout out to every single actor and director that has stepped to the piece, because it's a really difficult thing to play. It's at once, it's a specific time, and then it's extended time in the same, at once. So
yeah. I wanted to add shout out to our sound designer, Michaela, because she rolled with she gave us like a fantastic, I think, ending cacophony for that journey. And we were adjusting it, just today to like figure out, what we wanted to happen, which is kind of why we have the gospel music come in at almost an uncomfortable volume, to show the kind of discerning, if people have like anxiety attacks or panic attacks, that is a big part of it, is the sensory overload. And so having, our beautiful actress, Tanya Jackson, go through those things, and also having such a fantastic sound designer that was like, okay, you want a whole chaotic sequence? Got you. I got that. I just wanted to make sure to shout her out too.
Oh yeah, well deserved, because the sound alone was just keeping me on the edge and on that roller coaster ride. I have another audience question. What are your favorite traditions for the holidays? Latria, you go first.
Oh God, putting me on the spot. Probably baking with my mom, because she's hands down one of the best cooks that I know, but she will only, once we got old enough to stir the pot and make spaghetti or something, she was done. And so I sort of have taken over the cooking. When I would come back from school, I would do it. And so we're not in the kitchen together ever. And so as a kid, for bake sales and church sales and all of those things, right, you would get together and you would do sugar cookies, and she would show you how to press the glass and roll them in sugar and things. And so doing those and sort of taking them, into her job and things like that. Now we don't have a big family where we take them for the holidays, but doing that with her and then giving them to people is probably it's a super sappy Miss Universe answer, but it's my favorite thing. So.
That's not sappy at all. Mashama, what about you? Favorite holiday memory?
My favorite part is the gathering, the shopping. Is that weird? I like to go to the store or the wherever and figure out what's good, what we're gonna make, and it's the discussion surrounding how we're gonna start doing it. I like the preparation of it. I really do. That's hands down my favorite part.
And that is so underrated in the States. The French and the Italians take that part of the cooking and the celebration so seriously, that where you gather your foods, and it's okay to make many stops as opposed to just going to Publix and picking up everything in one fell swoop. Zora, favorite holiday traditions and memories?
Yeah, eating. Definitely all the food. I really am spoiled. We grew up very spoiled, because just the level of cooking in my family is next. My aunt is baking things from scratch, everything. And the pies and the breads and the meats and just, oh my gosh. And we would do, so on Christmas Day, when growing up, we'd start at my aunt's, and we come to my mother's house, and then we go to end the night on my grandma's, and then we go back to somebody else's house and do breakfast the next day. So, and then that's the food that lasts you to New Year's. And then on New Year's, my mother traditionally has a huge New Year's Day party with all the, the pig feet and the black eyed peas, the whole shebang. And then that'll last us probably till about February. So I say I'm eating holiday food till spring most years, and I enjoy it very much. Very lucky.
I don't consider you spoiled, because you're lucky. You appreciate it. And I think that's the difference between being spoiled and not being spoiled. You're grateful. And Ibby, favorite tradition or memory around the holidays?
One of my favorites is, so every year I have to, so my mom and my stepdad are like this with their traditional foods. So every year they'll give me one more. They just gave me stew chicken, and I think next year they're gonna give me Bueno soup. It's every year they give me one more. And so this year, my aunt gave me a bunch, but I'm still collecting them like Infinity Stones. So that's a big memory that I really enjoy. And then also the making of bread and the anticipation of it rising, and then when you get to smell it all through the house when you're getting ready for Thanksgiving, because we make like crusty loaves in the Dutch oven, we make like the yeast rolls, we have like a bunch of different stuff. That smell filling the house is something that like has always been a great memory.
All right, another question. What is Ibby, you just answered it. What is the one recipe you have that's passed down through your family that you treasure? Who wants to take that one? Latria, I'm putting you on the spot again.
I'm trying to think of one. I mean, because everybody really does their own thing, and like you have to work for it. You have to be in your 40s and married before you like really get anybody's recipe like that. And none of us are married. Like one of us has cracked 40. So, we're out here and I get made fun of because I'm that person that tries the quinoa or the bechamel sauce in the macaroni and cheese or whatever, and sort of bringing those weird things. So yeah, like it's I don't know. I guess it would be like grandma's hummingbird cake, like my paternal grandmother. That's one that she's passed. We lost her in March, but before she had a stroke, I mean, she would make a dozen different cakes, right? She had a pineapple cake, a coconut cake, a chocolate cake, a German chocolate cake, the yellow cake with the chocolate icing, which was like the favorite and stuff like that. So it would be either that yellow cake with chocolate icing, which I wrote, she doesn't really measure. And so I had to work for that one. I had to stand over her shoulder and try to write down things and then keep making it until it was right. So that one's not really been passed down in that same way, but I look forward to passing it down one way and then doing the same thing with her hummingbird cake.
Right. Okay, and then another question about, since you bring up passing down, and this will be my final question. I want to know the life lesson you learned in a kitchen from the elders, the female elders in the family, that sustains you today, that informs the way you go through the world, whether you picked it up as a little mama or when you got older and had more sense. You're smiling away, so tell me what your lesson is.
It was one of the first, I'm just thinking of how badly I did when my mom was teaching me how to cook. But it was one of the first times I was cooking with her, and I poured so much salt into what we were making, and I was like, oh, this is ruined, we have to start completely over. And she actually removed the stock and put new water in, and she was reassess, it's fine, if you've added too much, just take a little bit away. And as somebody who's an overthinker, that has applied to my life of I'll put a lot of things in, and that doesn't mean that I've ruined the situation. I just got to reassess and take some away and be less salty. So that's been my life lesson.
That's beautiful. Mashama?
I got to tell you, the first thing that came to mind is that my grandmother told me never to tell a man how much you make. And then the second one was sort of low and slow. She just was you have to nurture what you're cooking. And it goes back to talking to the food, right? She wasn't a taster, but she layered everything. And she felt you had to start at one point, and every 10 minutes she would put something different into the pot. So she was a big layerer. So she constantly kept going and stirring and paying attention. And I think listening and paying attention is probably the biggest thing I learned from her, but she never said it. It was all in her actions, because I don't even think she understood that that's what she was doing, but she was constantly feeding and nurturing and paying attention to it. But yeah, she was a trip.
That's a metaphor for motherhood, isn't it? And nurturing. You have to layer it if you're doing it right. Latria? I love everybody smiling and so happy thinking about these food memories.
Yeah, this is just such a good conversation. And for those listening, she did not give us these questions in advance. And so we are very much sort of caught in the moment. And so it is real. The smiles are real and the conversation is real. And because I was that is such a deep question that I didn't think I had a great answer to. But I remember this is before the visuals of Instagram and stuff, that people wanted to make really beautiful food. And this is back when sort of Martha Stewart was the, creme de la creme aesthetically in terms of what she was able to do. And then trying to create these things and getting really frustrated about it. And my grandmother was like, well, does it taste good, you know, or whatever? And I'm like, oh, it tastes fine. It's just not pretty or whatever. And she's like, that's fine. She was like, it doesn't, like, you know, and sort of thinking about this too, life doesn't have to be pretty, but it's yours. And if you're making it and you're doing it your way, then it's fine. And so I think about that now, sort of when done is better than perfect, and like being proud of what I get to put out.
Beautiful. I love that. Mashama, yes.
I have another one. So the first one was from my paternal grandmother who lived in New York City. And then the second one is from my maternal grandmother. And her lesson was, you never have to ask anyone how it was. All you have to do is look at the plates. So you never have to ask anybody, well, how's the chicken or how was the rice? All you have to do is kind of check out if people are eating the food, and then you already know how they feel about it. So that was her sort of like one thing, but we always ate her food up. So she didn't have to worry about that.
She knew the deal. And Zora, you get the last word.
I don't know if my mother ever said these words aloud, but I certainly learned from her that you do have to taste your food. She was both my mother and my father cooked in the household regularly. So I didn't just see only my mother cook. My father cooked regularly too, but they had two very different styles of cooking. And my father was very measured. He loved his recipes. He had all his little, you know, spoons and little cups out. And my mother was like, she saw it somewhere, she heard about it, she smelled it walking down the street, and she's trying it. And she loved going down to Chinatown and getting all just things that she never heard about before and just trying it. That was my mother's way. So she very rarely cooked with recipes, and really was just winging it a lot of the time. And I learned that skill about how to wing it, period, from my mother. But when she was cooking, but her food was bomb. Like, it was always great. And the thing that, you know, she was really about is that you have to taste your food. You can't wait till the end to see if it came. You have to taste along the way. You got to taste on the first layer and the second layer. When you add this and it changes the chemistry, you got to taste again then too. And I think the larger thing from that, and I think several of you kind of also touched on this, is that you have to trust yourself, you know, and trust your taste. If it tastes good to you, if you don't like it, if you think it needs more salt, it probably needs more salt. You know what I'm saying? If you don't like the texture that you think it needs to be, you know, thicker than that, then you probably need to cook some of that water out. You know, you trust yourself and trust your taste, but you can't do that if you're not tasting it. So taste your food.
Well, I'm so glad that we got to enjoy this meal together. I feel satisfied and fulfilled and nourished. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Mashama, I have to tell you that Matt Torney, the artistic director of Theatrical Outfit, let me curate the entire series. There was only one time he said, well, how about, and it was you. And that was his very sweet way of saying, we've got to get Mashama. So thank you for joining us. Maybe hats off to you for directing this over 2 days and moving us to our core. Zora, to your young self and the wisdom that you have put out there, the respect and the love, it's all on the plate. I thank you for that. And Latria, you call yourself shy, but you express yourself beautifully on the page and written. And I'm so grateful to all of you. Thank you. Let's have our reunion at the Gray next year at this time. Yes. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night.